He is such a rich character. Like, it's honestly crazy to think about. Grievous is super fascinating because he's got as much lore in canon as I feel like he did in Legends. So they've really fleshed out his character in many different ways. What do we know about Grievous in the beginning?
We know that he was a really, really good warrior.
He was another kind of killing machine.
Yeah.
He was just a regular killing machine.
He was normal. He's actually the underdog. His tribe was actually under a lot of attacks and things from a more insect-like neighboring species
who had Republic and Jedi backing. He was this killing machine rising through the ranks. Eventually, his people regarded him as like a demigod, really, because of his combat skills. Eventually, he became like so successful in his generaling. That's how I'm going to put it. He was able to like have this escapade to go to other planets and to conquer more of the galaxy until he eventually caught the eye of Palpatine and Dooku. They were looking at different people to put into the general roles in their droid armies. So they're looking at like, what are the different categories that we can look at in the galaxy of like these people that were like, oh, hey, this person has potential.
I feel like we also can't overlook the little romance that he had with another one of his fellow warriors. Because that was a really key part in
the Legends side of things.
And especially making him who he was.
Yeah.
And how angry he was and whatnot.
Yeah, he lost his wife to the neighboring tribe that he was constantly going to war at. And from what I could see too in the canon, that's not anywhere, but that's some of the reason that he started his rage. And more generally in the canon stuff, the rage was there from just his hatred of the Jedi in terms of how they were supporting that tribe as well.
So back to Grievous, he catches the eye of Dooku and Palpatine.
While Grievous is on the radar of Palpatine and Dooku gets recruited by the banking clan. And he becomes a bodyguard. He successfully rose through the ranks until he eventually was like, okay, the banking clan were like, just wanted to get rid of him because he was a little too effective and not necessarily as controllable as they would have liked.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on with this guy.
There's so much.
Oh my gosh.
He is such a rich character. Like, it's honestly crazy to think about. But yeah, like, Dooku really takes a liking to him. And he offers them the deal of like, hey, what do you think of this? We're going to slowly start cybernetically improving you. Piece by piece, they start to do that. They replace a part here, they replace here, and they slowly make him even more effective. And he's constantly got his eyes on the Jedi.
But Dooku and the banking people went in together and decided, let's make him a little bit more malleable.
How can we start to control him? So they start devising this plan here, and rumored is that Count Dooku started and planned a destructive force on his ship.
There was like a bomb planted.
He blamed the Republic and the Jedi to help fuel that. So they start doing this, and he's like, hey, you have an option here. You can either die or we can save you. And in Legends, they actually gave some of Sifo-Dyas's blood, I believe, and Dooku in an attempt to give Grievous force powers. But in canon, that never happened, and they just tried to, with Poggle the Lesser, they slowly start piecing Grievous back together. And I think ultimately he's about like 95% cybernetics and like 5% what he originally was. But alongside all of this, they also improve his brain. So they give him improved sight as well as improved cognition. They repress some of his memories to give him even more focus on his hatred towards the Jedi and the Republic. And he becomes an even more intense killing machine. Dooku eventually starts training him. He masters like 2 or 3 different Jedi fighting styles, like lightsaber styles.
But whenever you get into messing with someone's brain to improve it, you can also dampen some things.
The amount of trauma that he went through, that caused many different like mental disorders because of the amount of stuff that was taken from him, as well as just the general anger that they've kind of heightened.
I find that a really interesting choice. I mean, I get suppressing a lot of memories and things like that, but to heighten the anger, I feel like that's harder to, I mean, maybe anger.
It's easier to control if you know.
If you know just how, if you know your arrow is always going to fly to the right, you make adjustments for that.
Exactly. But they also wanted to experiment too with him
Yeah.
to see how they could improve their droid tech.
Yeah, everything's an experiment in Star Wars.
He's very interesting, and there haven't been many other options like this. Maybe the closest thing was in Mando Season 3 with the little dude living in the caves.
True.
He was very
Yeah.
Grievous-esque.
That was very Grievous-esque.